Recording. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
My screen is
Should we
blank
start, Sri?
now.
Sir?
My screen is blank. Are you able to hear me or see me?
Yes, I am
Yes,
able to
yes.
see you as well as hear.
You're visible and also you're audible.
But my screen is blank.
Okay.
Can you once leave and join again so that we can avoid this technical issue?
No, I can see now. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, can you with your welcome address?
Yeah. What about that issue? Is it over?
Should I start, sir? Or
Yes, sir. So good morning, all. I feel very happy in welcoming our speaker, Mr.Saumik Sarkar, Program Manager, WellsFargo, USA. Whenever I think about sir, the first thing comes to my mind is his approach in handling the things. Such a dedicated, resourceful, and respectful person. A special mention about our speaker is he's our alumni. He's our alumni. He did his BTech in our SRM Vadapalli campus in CSE department while working as a senior program manager in HP. Okay. So when we faculty members while handling classes for him, we feel like win-win situation. It's not like a normal teaching learning process. We used to exchange our ideas. Sir used to share his ideas and what industry expects from students. Like that, it's like a win-win situation for us. And above all, he made our department feel proud by being the university rank holder. He was ranked as university first in his batch. And a special thanks to sir for accepting my invite. And once again, I welcome you, sir, for this event. And also, I extend my hearty welcome to all other participants who are actively attending this event. Thank you. Over to Sriram.
Thank you, sir. So, as sir already said about his educational background and his achievements in our college, I wish to say about his professional summary and his experiences. So, first of all, Sarkar ji, so welcome you for the event, and we all, as SRMites, we are happy to meet our alumni and having a session from you. It's a great opportunity for us to interact with you. So, guys, I can't read without a profile because it's a big profile from him, and he have a lots of experiences which you can get inspired of. First thing is he have a 19 plus years of IT experience and 14 plus years of program project delivery management things. And seeing about his educational qualifications, he did his diploma in electrical engineering, and he's an alumni as usual. He's a BTech graduate of CSE department from our SRM, and he started his career as a technical head in PCS Industrial Limited, and he went as a senior system administrator and then a technical project head, and now he is working as a programs manager in WellsFargo, and it is on New Jersey, USA. So, sir, first of all, thank you to spend your time, a worthy time at the very beginning. So you can start your sessions.
sure. Thank you, Sridhar sir, for the nice introduction. We will talk about. I'm going to talk about today around about identity and access management. Maybe I don't know whether this topic is sounds familiar to all of you or not. I want this session to be interactive, so I have prepared a deck, a PPT. So, but I'll just go through that. Not just go through. I'll try to make you understand as much as possible about the topic. But whenever you have any questions, I would expect to stop me and ask me. So I kept the session completely for question answers at the end. But whenever you have any questions or any concerns, just stop me and ask me. Okay. Let me share my screen. Just let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the topic for today is identity and access management. Why I choose this topic, because I started my career long ago, and I started my career with this particular technology. I I worked for most of the part of my career. I worked for infrastructure. In IT, we all know today, right? There are many divisions, but earlier it was just infrastructure and development. Those are the two segment of IT. It used to be, but nowadays there are a lot of divisions, a lot of segments. I mean, a lot of cascading. Uh, so mostly in infrastructure side, I worked as in security part. So, and if I talk about security, there are a lot of things, and identity and access management going forward, we'll call it IAM for our understanding. In industry, it's called as IAM today. So IAM was part of security, obviously, and we'll talk about this. Okay, so what we are going to let me just, yeah, sorry. Can you see it now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So what are the things we will talk about today? What is identity and access management, obviously. Then why every organization today is going for it. I mean, every organization. Earlier, it was only mostly the banking side, the financial institution who started using IAM in their organization. But today, it's not only financial services, it's like everywhere, even in any retail industry, you name any industry and they are using the IAM today. And who are not implemented it today, they're implementing it. So it's everywhere. When I talk about it slowly going forward, then you will all get to know that what are the things that at part of IAM. What are the components of IAM? Identity lifecycle, things to know about IAM, what are the scopes and expectations, especially from students who are or the new joinee who are coming to this IT field. We are all from computer science background, right? So what we are expecting from new joinee as a IAM specialist or a technological area from IAM. And at the last question, but as I said, if you have any questions, just stop me and ask me. Okay. So we will start about identity and access management. So what first thing comes to your mind when you are going to start a job? You got a job, you gave an interview, your starting days it declared, you got the offer letter, you know that you have to join maybe tomorrow. And what are the things that are going on in the background in the company? So let's say I'm going to join your company, right? So tomorrow I'm going to be there in your premises, and you will hand over me the laptop, right? So that's the first step. And after I getting the laptop, what will I do? What is the next step? It's coming in your mind. After getting the laptop, I will log in. Obviously, I will log in. So think about the situation. I'm just telling you a story, and it will give you the idea that what is we are talking about. What is identity and access management? So I'm telling you this story, the real story, right? So after I getting the laptop, what I will do, I'll log in, right? So where I'm logging in, and it we can log in um, anywhere, right? I mean, what are the backends in the company? I don't know, but after getting the laptop, I'm getting the login screen and logging in. Maybe it's a directory. Obviously, it's a directory service where I'm logging in. Maybe it could be a Microsoft Active Directory. It could be a Oracle Unified Directory. It could be a E directory, whatever it is. But mostly it's Windows, right? Active Directory. I'm logging in. After logging in, what should I do? I I am hired for a particular reason, right? So I have to perform my job. So I can be anywhere. I can be I mean, anyone. Maybe as an architect, I joined as a developer. I joined as an administrator. So for different purpose and different purposes, I need different applications, right? So not only applications, I need my access to those applications. I need my individual ID created to those applications. So those are the basic steps when a person, when a new joinee is joining to a institution or organization, right? So let's take me to my next slide. Let's a person is joining to a organization. First thing he needs, obviously, a directory service where his user ID is getting created so that he can log in at least. So in our case, it's maybe Active Directory. Then we need a mail, right? Obviously, everybody needs a mail for joining a company. So I got my mail. Then maybe think about anything. Maybe I need access into the database, maybe multiple instances or multiple databases, right? So I need access on that. Then a lot of applications I need access uh, on the first day of my job, right? So now think about from the company perspective, administrator who is sitting in the office and he got the request from the HR that this person is coming to join and this person is joining in that day. And I have to make him ready, handing over his laptop so that he can log in and he can access his things to perform his job from the day one. So what he is doing, he's creating the IDs as an administrator, not only creating IDs in Active Directory, he is giving the permissions. Let's say I need a specific location, maybe a H drive, maybe my personal location to save my files, different file servers. I need the access to those file servers, to those files and directories. So he's specifically giving some access to those servers. Then he's configuring the mail, right? We are going to office, getting a laptop, just providing my mail ID, and it is getting configured and open up the Outlook. But in the back end, what we have to do to set up a user ID in Exchange, who are doing that, he knows that what are the steps he has to do, a lot of steps. Then multiple, yeah, anyone is having any questions?
No, sir. It's an
Hello,
audio.
I didn't hear.
No. It's
No,
not a
sir.
question, sir.
Okay,
Please.
okay. So now maybe he or she is joining as a database administrator. So he or she will need a lot of instance accesses, right? A lot of database accesses. So as an administrator, I have to create those IDs, giving those accesses to all those databases, to all those instances, right? Then multiple applications. So uh, when I was working in general reinsurance in US for a company, for a reinsurance company, I was in security administration. I was not a program manager at that time. I was a hardcore technical person. I was a part of security administration team. So I know when I was getting user request, new user is joining, but for a single user, like a small company, like a reinsurance company, I was getting around 10 to 12 users per day. And once I get that 10 to 12 users creation request per day, my whole day was gone. So each users to create manually end to end, it's minimum, it's like 1 hour job. And if I'm getting 10 to 12 users per day, I'm just done for the day. So think about the industry, or think about the companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, TCS, IBM, CTS, how many people are getting created every day? It's thousand in thousand numbers, right? So it could be a big team for administrators who are creating the ITs, but it's not feasible for them to do it manually in today's world, right? So now it's think about my situation. If I am joining, I need this many applications. Let's say it's joining 1,000 users in one day. That is happening in everyday's world, right? So, and they are getting all these similar accesses, right? And so what could be the solution? Here, the technology is coming into the field, which is called IAM. How the users are getting created, how the accesses are being granted. The whole technology is known as identity and access management. By the name, we can understand there are two parts of this. One is identity and one is access management. So what is identity and what is access management? We will get to know more after this slide. I mean, going forward. So are we clear on what is identity and access management, at least as of now? I mean, so far. So identity is part of creating the IDs, dealing with the IDs, that how to create a particular user and where to create a particular user in the applications or in the database or in the directory services. So dealing with the identity, that's called identity management. And dealing with the access part, that where he will get the access, what are the things he will have the access. That's access management. That is different. So identity and access management, we name it together. We call it IAM, but identity is different. Use cases are different. Access management is different. It's not that different, but it's related. Obviously, it's related. But to understand it, it's different. So now I'm talking about use case of identity management, that creating the users on these applications or on directory services. So far, any questions? Okay.
So far, no, sir.
Let's go to the let's go to the next slide. So now, okay. Now I'm talking about, or we will talk about use case of access management. In access management, there are two things that we usually talk. It's a very common word, authentication and authorization, but it's a very significant word because so far the interviews I have given for many companies, the interviews I have taken for many people, these are the basic questions. I mean, going forward, if you are choosing your technological area, that what you'll do for to enter into the IT field. Obviously, you have to choose a field, right? Whether maybe it's administrative, whether maybe it's a DevOps, maybe through the architectural way, or whatever it is. So if someone is coming to the IAM field and on the security field, at least, it's not related to IAM, I would say, the authentication and authorization. It's related to security. And in IT today, security is everything, especially in the realm of the internet, I mean, era, right? So it's a basic thing. So if you are clear about authentication and authorization, and I have seen many people, many people, their experience for a lot of years and not having a very clear idea about authentication and authorization. So I'll give you a very basic understanding. I'm trying to give you um, so that it will be very clear to you that what is authentication and authorization. Let's say there is a room, and inside that room there are many things like laptop, um, tabs, any gadget, you name it, phones, anything. You are allowed to take those after entering the room. So think about the scenario. You're standing outside the room and someone is giving you a key to enter into the room. So you open the lock and you enter to the room. That's authentication. So you are authenticated to enter into that room, but you cannot touch anything. Though it's open, you can see it, you can feel it, but you cannot grab it. You cannot take it away because you do not have any access on that. So someone have to give you access to grab any gadget, right? You want. When you get that, you get that access, you can take anything. You can take the laptop, right? That's authorization. So there is a significant difference between authentication and authorization. So authentication means you are allowed to log in or to enter, but you cannot touch anything, you cannot access anything until someone is authorizing you. Here, I mean, there are many lines here written. You can read those lines, but this is the basic thing. If you understand this, it will be clear to you what is authentication and what is authorization. And nowadays, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to grant you the authentication. We will learn those things. We will get to know those things. There are many ways that we can do authentication and authorization depending on the demand, uh, the depending on the business, depending on the needs, depending on the type of environment we are working with, uh, type of infrastructure you are in. But depending on that, there are many types of authentication and authorization. So, but authentication, it's obviously you can understand, right? Passwords, fingerprints, smart card, token. Those are the things that you can at least log in. You can at least enter. So those are the things that we are using today's world for authentication. And authorization, you can see that happens after user identity has been successfully authenticated. After authentication, authorization starts. Right? So it's offering full or partial access rights to resources. Anything. It could be database, applications, informations, files, anything. So any questions on so far? Okay, let's move to the next slide. So we were talking about authentication techniques, right? And authorization techniques. So let's start with authentication techniques. So, and there are many scenario-based examples or live examples, right, for authentication techniques. We are using that. Maybe we don't know the internal uh, architecture or internal technology, internal how it's working actually, but we are all using that day to day. I mean, if you're going for Amazon to buy something, it's authentication and authorization. We are coming to that. So authentication, we are using many things. I just noted down few important, which are you cannot bypass, which are very, very important. There are many ways of authentication, but I just noted down very few, like 4 or 5. But these are you cannot avoid, like password-based authentication. Obviously, by the name you can understand, right? You need a password to enter or verify your identity. Password-less authentication. Yes, today's world, you know that when you are receiving OTP.
No, sir, it's a technical issue.
Participants,
I
kindly
think
mute your
that
mic.
was, yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, so yeah, password-less authentication, right? So in today's world, we all know, right? We are just getting an OTP or a link, and we are just getting in, putting that OTP. Even many things. I mean, very common to a banking solution, right? They are sending the OTP, you are providing the OTP, and you're going to that particular site. Next is 2FA, MFA, we call is multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. It could be 3-factor, 4 factors. So we call it multi-factor authentication. It's like a stage solution, stage authentication, stage by stage, one by one. One authentication sometimes is not very secure in many applications, like mostly in banking side or financial side or a brokerage side, mostly in the brokerage area, mostly in the uh, share market or share applications if you're using that. they're mostly they're using two-factor authentications. So, it's like same thing, but it's once you have the password, maybe after that they will ask some questions, maybe they will send you some OTP, maybe they will use a PIN, but it is multi-factor. So it's a stage-by-stage authentication. Then single sign-on, we all know, right? We don't have to put any password. Once you log in, there are few default sites, there will be few default applications which you will get automatic access. There is nothing called automatic, it's a single sign-on. So those applications are tagged into your identity and access management applications the company is using, and they are using single sign-on for those applications or those portals, so that you don't have to provide any password after you log into your system. You can just go directly to those applications. Those are tagged. That's why you can log in. They are not asking you the passwords. So those are using single sign-on. Then social authentication, we all know today's world, right? I mean, if you are going to any site or any new opening account, maybe they're asking your Gmail authentication, maybe they're asking your Facebook authentication, maybe Instagram. So there are many sites that they need. They don't ask you to create your account or anything. You can use your Google account. You can use your Facebook accounts. So those are social authentication. So they have I'll come later in the authorization part, mostly with that. Um, Maybe in the OAuth side, I mean, OAuth, when we will discuss OAuth, you will get to know more. So it's not a identity. Sometimes it may be a service also. I'll come to that. So those are the things that we normally use for the authentication techniques in our industry today. Similarly, we have many techniques for authorization. We will talk about role-based access control. So the authentication techniques, you can only log in, right? As I mentioned. So after you log in, you need the access to perform anything. So let's talk about the role-based access control. What is that? So in a company, think about a scenario. You are joining as an architect and your friend is joining as a developer. Maybe another friend is joining as an administrator. Okay. So when a person joining as an administrator, he needs mainly the admin accesses on those applications. But when you are joining as a developer, you don't need an admin access, right? You will survive with the read-write access or maybe a read-only access. So it's depending on the role, in which role you are joining. So they will create a policy in such a way that they will not give you the permissions manually, or they will not give you the permissions seeing the HR database that this person is joining, he will need these accesses. No, once the HR is mentioned in the form, that form is coming to the administrator or we call it IAM solution team, and they're seeing that, okay, this person is joining as architect. Fine, I have to give him Visio. I have to give him some other applications like Salesforce, but we have to give him this application. So depending on the role, architect, so they will create a policy. They will just put you in that policy. They will feed you in that policy so that you will get all those accesses what architect needs. Similarly, if a person is joining as an administrator, they already created a policy for administrator. These accesses they need after they join, after they coming to the organization. This person needs these applications. What are the labels of accesses? Maybe admin access, maybe read-write access on those instances. So depending on that, they already created a policy. They just feed you on that policy. They just link you to that policy and you will get all these accesses. So those are role-based accesses. Similarly, we have policy-based access control. So they created a lot of policies, and depending on your uh, depending on your access, I mean, what level of access you need, they will just link to that policy. So you will get all those accesses, what they have created, pre-created in their policy list. So these are the difference, and these are the two terms nowadays. These are in discussion. Many companies are implementing these. These are very new. These are very what should I say? These are very in demand. These are not easy. These are very complex because there will be a lot of fine-grained access. In our access industry, we call it coarse grain access, which is like coarse, right? It's like big access, read write, read only. But there are some fine grained access. Under read write, there are a lot of other accesses that you can define. So these are very complex structure. RBAC, and you need a lot of planning. You need a lot of architectural planning, a lot of contingency planning, a lot of risk. You have to decide. I mean, you have to think about. You have to note down all those risks, how to mitigate, how to avoid those risks. So these are very complex structure. These are very in now. Many companies have not yet implemented, but they're planning it to implement because these are very powerful, or uh, it can ease the whole IAM thing. Today's how the IAM is working. Most of the part of IAM is automated today, but still that automation also be more ease by implementing this RBAC and PBAC. So when you actually come to this field, you will get to know more what is RBAC and PBAC and how people are trying to implement those. Another very interesting, that is SAML. It's a full form, maybe security assertion markup language, I believe. Yes. So SAML is basically using for authentication. It's a protocol kind of thing. And SAML JIT, JIT is just in time. That's basically using for authorization. So I'm giving you another scenario where we are using SAML. Let's say we are SRM students, right? So you are accessing all the materials inside SRM. Now you need to access something from some other university, maybe anywhere. Maybe let's say it's a Chennai-based university, maybe it's a US-based university, but you need those materials also from that university. And that university has a tie-up with SRM. How we will contact that university by putting your credentials or your user ID and password just for SRM, but you will get that access. You will have that access to read that material, which is situated in their server, in their premises, right? In that case, which is outbound, which is outside your network, your private network or your local network, we use SAML. So it's basically a third party. You are choosing someone as a third party who will authenticate you as a user. So we are depending on a third party service provider who will be in between these two organizations, SRM and some third party or other university. There will be a third party service provider who will have all the information or will have the certifications for both the university students or identities, right? Okay, this request is coming from SRM. Fine, I have that in my database. So this is the request for it's coming from SRM. Nobody else is requesting me. So I'll pass that request to the university. Similarly, from the other university, I have that in my database. I'll pass it to SRM so that they can connect in between, but they are relying on the third party service vendor. So that concept, we use SAML. OAuth, it's again a very interesting. OAuth, basically, we use for service authorization. So what is that? Now, so far we are talking about identity authentication authorization, right? It's as a human being. Now, service also can be authorized. I'm giving you a scenario. Let's say you are you want some pictures to be printed, right? Let's say in Amazon, you want to order a few pictures that going to be printed and send it to your house. You go to Amazon site, you started uploading the photos, right? But nowadays, who kept their photos in their local phone? Maybe they kept it to OneDrive, maybe they kept it to Google Drive, uh, wherever it is, right? In the cloud. And Amazon or a service provider where you are going for printing those uh, pictures, they don't have that facility that you can put your Google account or your Google um, photo or your cloud photo to enter there, right? So how do you do that? They have to incorporate that, right? So you cannot put the pictures that you have in your local drive. So nowadays we are doing that, right? Yeah. So that's service to service, right? So that particular, let's say Amazon is giving you that um, that option so that you can link your Google account and they can take those pictures from the Google account. So for that, what you are providing your user ID and password to Amazon? No, they cannot ask your user ID and password for the Google service, right? For the Google account. So if we cannot share our passwords or our uh, security things to any other companies, right? So they have authorized the service that, okay, fine, we are using OAuth here. Okay, fine, we are going to use a particular these features that will give us the authority to access your these pictures. Nothing other than that. Not my mail, not my Google Drive or anything. It's just they will use my Google Pictures. A segregated service. In those cases, we are using OAuth. So it's a service to service authentication. Any questions so far?
Yes, sir. Example is clear for us.
Okay. Let's go to the next one. Now we will talk about, we will go in deep, right? So we'll talk about what are the components of IAM. Okay. Here I will say that there are many part of IAM. Like let's say I segregated in two part. One is IAM, one is IAM service. So components are different for IAM and IAM services. So let's talk about hardcore IAM. I'm here in this slide. I'll be going to talk about hardcore IAM from the infrastructure perspective, from the development perspective, and then we will go to the service and we will talk about the components of IAM services. So here, how the IAM is actually working. So for IAM, we need a directory service where all the user IDs, all the user informations will be stored. Forget about IAM. If I'm not talking about this particular part, I'm just talking about the directory service. For every company, they are using the directory service. Without directory service, they cannot create their infrastructure. A user, where the user will log in, how the user will log into the system without the directory service. So they need a directory service to hold all the user informations. User informations means username, first name, last name, email ID, phone number, whatever it is. The groups they have access to. So, and remember one thing, these are the user informations, but the fields, right? If you just think about a form like name, first name, last name, phone number, these are called attributes. So going forward, we'll call it attributes. So a user or identity have a lot of attributes like first name, last name, phone numbers, all are stored in the directory service. Now, another thing is coming to the picture now for IAM. And that's called implementing IAM. When we are implementing IAM in an infrastructure or in a company, we need to install the whole application, right? And it will first thing, it will create a ID vault where they will store all the IDs again from the directory service. Because all these applications, in the first slide, if you can remember, IDs are getting created to all those applications, right? If we create an ID, once we create an ID in the IAM, it will create the IDs in all those linked applications so that an administrator don't have to go to each application and create those IDs. That's the purpose of IAM, right? Identity and access management, identity management. We'll create a particular user in a particular single place, and those user IDs will be created is all those applications wherever is needed, wherever required. So that's the identity management. That's the goal of identity management, right? So when I was talking about that creating the IDs in IAM, I was actually talking about creating the IDs ID vault. So inside IAM, there is another directory, service or database, you can say. We call it ID vault. Few companies are calling it ID store. Uh, few companies calling it ID bank. Few company call it just vault. So all the IDs will be created there. We'll create those ID there. So how those IDs are getting created? We are creating the ID. Obviously, one person is coming to the organization. We will create the IDs in the directory service in Active Directory, right? And the Active Directory will be linked with that ID vault. And how it is linked? We are calling it driver. Sometimes we call it connector. And from the ID vault, there will be other drivers or other connectors which will connect to all those applications. Think about my first slide. There are all those arrows, right? Those are all drivers. Through the drivers, the IDs are getting created. There will be some link, right? And we all know about connector. So sometimes we call it connector. So whenever we will create ID, it will be created in the ID vault through a particular driver. If it's a AD to the ID vault, mostly we call it AD driver. And from that ID vault, those ID will be created, all those applications and the drivers which are connected to those applications. So when we are implementing IAM, we'll implement ID vault, then we'll start creating the drivers depending on the applications. Now I'm in Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is going through a transformation. Before Wells Fargo, I was in a Swiss bank. Swiss bank also was going through a transformation. They are implementing these IAM solutions. Here also Wells Fargo, they're implementing the IAM solutions. They're onboarding these applications. In Wells Fargo, we have almost 5 to 6,000 applications. And all these applications are getting onboarded to this IAM solution. So for each applications, we have to create an individual driver, right? And those drivers are getting created in many ways. I'll come to that later. And basically what we are dealing with through all these drivers is just the attributes, just the user IDs, right? Just matching the attributes. In driver, there are many things. It seems like just a connector, but there'll be many things like all the policies, all the we call it driver schemes, like the policy, the fine policies, policy inside the policies, um, uh, the logics, everything inside that driver. Like, and let's say for an application, I can give you an example. For an application, um, maybe that application has name, last name, phone, just phone, and just try to listen my word as a particular word, like hard coding, right? Phone means I'm talking about phone, not phone ID or phone number, phone. Then mail ID. Okay. So this application is having that attribute. Now, another application which we have to connect through ID Vault is having first name, not the name, first name and last name. Let's say after that, cell number. There is nothing called phone. And then say, let's say mail, just mail, not mail ID. But we have to link that, right? If someone is giving name, let's say name, I'm giving Saumik. Another application, I'm giving first name as Saumik. So how they will know, how that application will understand that Saumik is the first name for that application. Because I put name, right? I given my phone number. In one application, its attribute is phone. In another application, the attribute is phone cell number. But the numbers are same, but the how application will understand that. So you have to map that attribute, right? So those logics are written inside the drivers. If I found name for that application, I'll assume that it's a first name. If I found mail, I'll assume that that is a mail ID. If I found phone, I'll assume that that's a cell number. So you have to map those attributes. So all these mappings are there inside the driver. And driver is the main part of any IAM solution today. Anything you think about, any logic, you think about any innovation, you think about any coding, whatever is needed, it's needed only for the driver. Other things are inbuilt. ID Vault, you cannot do anything. You have to buy it and you have to install it. You cannot change anything over there. Yes, obviously you can change. I mean, then you have to work in Microsoft to create the Azure Vault, right? But creating drivers, maybe Azure directory, creating a drivers, that's on you. That's not Microsoft is going to do for you, because your application, it's your application. It can be in-house application. It may be or may not be a COT, right? It may not be a Microsoft Office or Salesforce. It can be an in-house application, and any company number of in-house applications are more than the COT. So you have to create those drivers. So today's whoever is taking the DevOps or the development pupil, development guys, the college pass out guys, they are basically, taking for this creation of drivers, because there you need the coding. Other things are inbuilt. We'll talk about that. Any questions on that? The components. These are the main components of IAM. Okay. And then I was talking about IAM service, right? So these are basically like services of IAM. So authentication service, authorization service that we already know. Then we have user management service and we have directory service. In authentication service, we have SSO, MFA, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, sessions, tokens. We all know that. I mean, we already talked about that. Authorization services, roles, rules. Role-based authentication, rule-based authentication, policy-based authentication, attributes. PAM, that's a new word. What is PAM? It's privileged access management. In any company, for any applications, you need a regular access, you need elevated access. And what is regular access? What is elevated access? Regular access means regular access. It can be a read-only access, it can be a view access, it can be a read-write access. And elevated access means it can be admin access. That's elevated access, right? You can do anything on that. Then can be another elevated access, above admin access, who can approve those requests, like who will be getting added to those admin roles. So that means they are the approver of the admin access, right? Those are, another elevated access of admin access. So these are privileged accounts, and we have to be very careful, and we have to track continuously, which is called, I'll come to that, which is called certification, periodical certification, right? Why we need periodical certification, periodical check, I'll come to that later. But these are privileged access, and we have to very carefully handle or very carefully maintain those accesses regularly, in a very regular basis, for the security purpose, right? I mean, nobody has those accesses easily, or nobody can bypass those approval service and get the elevated access. And especially in the any companies, but especially in the financial company, it can harm the business. It can just shut down the business if a improper person get a improper access. Think about that what he can do. So it's a very sensitive area. Always the security is the sensitive area of IT, but the privilege access management is the most sensitive area in IAM. And it's just three-letter word, but you will get, uh, I'm saying you will get a very nice pay, or highest paid salary if you are just a person of PAM. In today's market, there are lot of work, a lot of jobs in very renowned companies only for the PAM consultants, or the PAM specialist. I mean, end to end, who can implement the solution, who can design the solution for the PAM, because we are having every day we are having trouble with the privilege access management. So PAM is very sensitive area and very interesting area, I'd say, in IAM. Then user management service, obviously provisioning, deprovisioning. Provisioning means you're you're provisioning the user access. I mean, adding the user access. That's provisioning actually. Deprovisioning, you are just switching off the access, or you're deleting the access, you're removing the access. That's deprovisioning. So in IAM world, we call it provisioning and deprovisioning. Then self-service. Self-service, you all know, right? I mean, we have instruction written in a portal, and we are just going line by line, doing our self-service, getting the access. It's all written, and it's all pre-given, pre-provisioned. We are just doing by myself or ourselves. That's self-service. Then delegation. Delegation also, it's a very interesting thing, and it's especially interesting. It's very related to the PAM. Like, uh, I don't want to give everyone admin access. Rather, what I can do, I can delegate their access to some level, so that he can perform that admin role for some time. So that's called delegation. I'm delegating my job to someone partially, not full. That is not a delegation, right? Delegation means you are just delegating your sum of work. Similarly, in access also we can do that. Some of the access, we are just delegating that to someone. So that's delegation. It's very related to PAM, privilege access management. We don't want to be, or don't want to give the admin access to everyone. Admin will be very few in a company, but delegated admin maybe a lot, because they are doing the most of the jobs. So we were delegating those accesses. So that's called delegation. Directory service, I mentioned just now, identity store, where all the IDs are stored, right? The directory. The federation, where all the accesses are getting federated, certified. That's called federation. Now, why certification is required? I'll come to that later in the identity life cycle. But to give you the heads up, that what is certification? Let's say we have 30 members in a particular group who are having the admin access on a particular database in Oracle. So we know that these 30 people are the admins of these Oracle instances. The request is coming for adding users, deleting users, creating instances, creating databases, creating tables, whatever it is. Those 30 people are doing, right? Out of those 30 people, 10 people are gone. 5 people changed their role. They are not no more the admins officially. So we have to check that periodically, right? We have to remove those people from that group. Otherwise, let's say they are today in that particular role, and after 6 months, 10 people gone, 5 people change their role. But still, if we can't do anything, if we don't do anything with that group, those 30 people will have the same access, right? If we can't do anything, if we don't do anything with that group, if we don't remove them from that group. So periodical check is a thumb rule. Uh, it's a mandatory rule or mandatory work for any IAM solution to do that. So we call it certification. Nowadays, it's not done manually. It's no company is doing it manually. It's all automatic. So certification in most of the cases, it's automation, completely automation. We have to set the time period. Maybe it's a weekly, bi-weekly, quarterly, biannually, annually sometimes. It's depending on the organizational policy, company's policy, infrastructure policy, type of business, again, type of infrastructure, type of role, type of applications. Tiering, again, tiering is one factor in IAM, tier 1, tier 2. So depending on the access levels, we name it as a tier 1 level, tier 2, tier 3. So depending on the tiering, if it's admin access, it's common sense, right? If someone is having read-only access, so the certification time span, what could it be? Maybe 90 days, or maybe biannually, 6 months. We'll check once. That's all, because it's just read-only. What someone will do having the read-only access if we don't remove them? Let's say what he or she can do, nothing. But it's a read-write access, or if it's a admin access. For most of the companies in today's world, admin access checks monthly. We check it monthly. Obviously not manually, automatically. It's a completely automation, but we do it monthly. For the read-write access, maybe quarterly. So depending on the access level, so we call it tiering. Depending on that, we do the federation or do the certification part. Virtual directory, it's completely cloud. I'm not talking about cloud today. It's a completely different subject, because cloud IAM, it's same as on-prem IAM, but the technologies are different. The infrastructure is different. That will be altogether a different subject. Maybe we can talk about later or another day. So the virtual directory, I just touched it because it's like, think about the cloud part. Like AWS has their own IAM solution. Azure has their own IAM solution. So any questions so far? Okay.
No, sir, no.
So next one is life cycle. Every identity has a life cycle. What are there are many steps, but there are 4 major steps, and it's very, very simple. First is onboarding. Think about a user. You are joining a company. My ID is getting created, right? When I joined as a maybe junior technician or junior developer. So my access level is maybe this much. I have few read-only access, 1 or 2 read-write access, that's all. After a few years, I become a module lead or a project lead. So obviously my access level will be higher. I'll get most of the read-write access, many application access, right? So my access will be modified or will be updated. So that's the second life cycle. That's the second stage of life cycle, right? After joining, I'm changing my role. My designation is getting higher. I'm getting promoted, more responsibilities, and more accesses, right? So update and modify. Then just now I talked about certification. So when I change my role in the company, my access are getting changed. So I need a periodical check on that, right? To remove my access, to add my access, maybe, or to change my access. Maybe my name got changed, maybe my address got changed. So anything related to ID, we need to check that and we need to change that accordingly. And that has to be a real time. We cannot do that. And there are a lot of other things. It's not only security. It's most of the time it's for auditing also. And you have to comply when you join a company. There are a lot of things you'll get to learn. That's something called audit. And there are many things you have to do, you have to comply with, or you have to adhere with, just to be uh, in sync for the audit, in sync with the audit. It may not be, it seems it may not be necessary, it may not be related, it may not be uh, uh, very necessary to do, but sometimes you have to do it for audit purpose also. But the certification is one of those things that for read only also, right? We don't need certification, to be very frank, but we have to do that. Maybe a few companies are doing once in a 6 months, maybe a few companies are doing once in a year, but we have to do that to comply with the audit. So certification is very essential thing, especially for the higher level of accesses. Very, I mean, periodical check, and it should be a real time. The user got removed or user got changed their company on the very day, and that particular moment they have to remove the access, and that's the real time. You cannot just remove the access after 6 months after the user left, right? Anything can happen in between. So that should be real time. So there are a lot of things. SOD, it's a very important term in IAM. Segregation of duties. There will be few users, right, in a company. They will be fired suddenly. That's a segregation of duties, right? Or just fired, right? So we have to act very quickly, and we have to remove those accesses. It's not a regular, uh, I mean, firing, right, or a regular layoff thing. It's a sudden. So we have to act suddenly also. So that kind of policy has to be there in the IAM. When a user is going segregated very quickly or suddenly, what policy should be implemented, or what policy should be triggered for that user. So it's all part of certification. And then offboarding, just permanently remove, or maybe not removing permanently, maybe just disabling. There are a lot of applications. There are a lot of applications in my current role also. For many applications, we are not deleting the users. We are just disabling the users. Maybe that application doesn't have that facility to remove the users. It can happen. There are a lot of applications that we cannot delete the users. The user can be disabled, but that is deprovisioning. You are just stopping accesses by disabling or by deleting, whatever way, or just removing from the groups, removing the access. So that's offboarding. So there are mainly four stages. One, you are creating the user, then you are changing the roles, then the accesses are getting changed, then the checks, periodical checks, whether you have to check whether users are getting, I mean, the access got changed in between, or they changed their roles. So the certification is required, right? And after that, finally, the user is moving out. So you have to close these accesses. We have to remove the accesses. So these are the four main part of any life cycle of IAM. Any questions so far? Okay.
No, sir. No, sir.
Now, things to know about IAM. Think in a real-time scenario. That what we are actually doing. in today's world, right? It's not only theoretical. It's not uh, that you get to know from reading a book. It's a practical thing. What I note down here, it's very practical. What you have to do actually coming to a company, and how IAM works in a company, starting from the implementation, or any company is thinking about implementing IAM, or any project starting on IAM. They're planning to start on IAM, and what exactly they are doing. Obviously, as I said, that the solution is very complex because you have to think about many things, many many uh, infrastructure oriented, application oriented, because IAM is not only part of infrastructure, part of applications also, because without application, there is no existence of IAM. All the applications the company is using, they have to be in line with the IAM system of the company, because every applications I mean, any applications, user is must, right? The user is working on that application, so they have the access to the application. They will work on the application. So application will be in line. It has to be in line with the IAM solution. So think about that. Infrastructure, you have to be in line with the infrastructure, all the servers, network, and everything, and then with applications. So it's an in-between link between infrastructure and application, like any other security models. So it's a complex thing, many moving parts, right? So what are the things? We start from the beginning. Let's say we need, for anything, right? For first few things, I don't expect that you will understand everything, um, because obviously we are all students, right? So uh, we need a sponsorship whenever we are going to start anything in a company. We need money, and we need approved money. We need an approved budget, right? So maybe we first uh, plan our project, and then we think about the money, that how much money will I need to implement that project end to end. We have to cost that, we have to budget that, and we have to get those money from someone. So we call it sponsorship. Mostly it's coming from CIO, or maybe the BFM, and it consists of all the C-level executives. We call it steering committee. We have to give the presentation. We have to give the uh, our planning with the estimation, with the schedule, with the budget to that particular pupil, and we call it. It's a very important and regular update also. So that's steering committee. It's a high level, a very high level committee who will just sponsor you and take the regular update, that how the project is going on, or how the implementation is going on. Are you facing any difficulties, any challenges? So you have to give regular update. And after that, obviously, you have to establish strategy, right? End-to-end strategy. Without seeing those milestones, without seeing the strategy end-to-end, the roadmap, you cannot implement anything. You cannot think about anything. So you have to note down first. You have to plan first the whole roadmap of the solution, from where we will start, where we are going to end to end, and that you have to show it, right? And accordingly, it's a whole project, and you need a project manager for that, like what I am doing. So you need that to maintain that project, because architect, he will do his part, right? He will just architect everything, design everything, to understand that design, and to make that design, to uh, uh, make the developer team understand that design. You need someone in between, right? We call it product manager. He understands what the design is, and he make those designs understands to the developer, and developer then start coding, and they develop the whole thing, right? And the QA team who will obviously do the testing, and there will be some implementation team who will implement that. It's not always the developers who is doing the implementation. There will be separate implementation team. For big companies, there are separate implementation team. Even after implementation, there will be support team, and those teams are different. Those are support team. after go live, who will take care of who will take care of those applications? The support team. So, and those teams are working together from the beginning till the end. Architect not only do the design, he overview throughout the implementation, whether his design is getting implemented as he designed earlier. So it's not like that, that the architecture part is done after the designing. Okay, fine. I have designed it. I'm done from this project. No, everybody is linked together from end to end. And who is coordinating between all those teams? Who is doing all those sync up, all those collaborative job? That's project manager. He is managing the whole project end to end, right? And the backbone of this team is obviously the developer side, a skilled and experienced implementation team who knows that what is expected and what they have to develop and what they have to implement. So they are the backbones, obviously. And after that, I'll come into the next slides. I think I have a slide on that, the vendors, selecting the right vendors. There are, when I started the identity and access management back in 2010, 11, uh, there were 3 to 4 identity providers. One is Microsoft, another one is Sun. Now Sun is acquired by Oracle. Then Novell, and another one. I forgot that. But there are 3 or 4. There are 3 or 4 service provider per IAM. But nowadays, like hundreds. Uh, Depending on our infrastructure, depending on our need, depending on our company policy, or sometimes the type of business we are doing, we choose the vendor. And choosing vendor is a process. I mean, we went through several meetings, several quotations, several workshops just to choose the vendor, right vendor, because choosing a right vendor is a um, is a part of success, I would say. If you can't choose a proper vendor, going forward, it will be a mess. You will see that a lot of things that you thought that it will be implemented, it can be implemented through that vendor. It's not going to happen. It's not happening. And in the mid of the implementation of the project, if you find something that it's not possible through this vendor and it could be possible through some other vendor, you are gone because you choose that vendor. So it's a challenging part, and it's a very crucial part to choose a proper vendor, because nowadays there are a lot of options and everyone will say that we can do that. So but you have to judge, you have to understand the product, read through the product, you have to uh, R&D the product basically to understand they will purpose, or it will resolve your purpose, and your purpose is different from other purpose, right? Other one's purpose. So again, it's depend on the company what you need. Then data cleanup is a very big thing, very crucial thing also. There are a lot of data cleanup is needing once you think about the IAM implementation. If you can remember my past slides, when I talk about the attributes, I talk about the particular attributes, right? And there will be lot of thousands attributes. There are thousands of groups. And if most of the application is not in sync, it will be very difficult in actual scenario to implement the drivers, to implement the whole IAM thing. So cleanup is very important. If an application can be cleaned up, the fields, the attributes can be cleaned up, or the data can be cleaned up. And most of the times, I'm giving you a real-time scenario, real-time example. Nowadays, we are not creating the users one by one or feeding into the IAM just one by one, or creating the users one by one. We are creating in bulk, and we are creating through a particular file. maybe it could be a Excel file. It it could be a, notepad. Um, Thousands of users or hundreds of users are listed. We are just placing that file in a particular, maybe a batch job, maybe a folder, and the driver is taking from that particular place. It could be a SFTP place also, but in a bulk. Certification. Think about the certification. When we are do the periodical check, how many users will be checked for that particular certification? The whole users of the company, thousands of users, and in millions of accesses, right? Are getting certified every day or quarterly or weekly, whatever it is. So clean up of all those files so that it will be in symmetrical, because in a certification or in a certification field, the software, right, the IAM system cannot accept any format. It has to be a particular format, right? The very user friendly vendors, they accept like 6 to 7 columns. I'm giving you the real scenario: first name, last login time, user status, whether that is active, disabled, deleted, mail ID, and a unique ID depending on the company. So most of the vendors who are very user friendly, they accept this format. So you have to create that file automatically, right? And to create that file on a regular basis, you need to clean up the data. Otherwise, it will be full of junk, right? So data cleanup is a crucial thing. Obviously, you need to have dev, QA, and prod. Without testing, and the last step I did, test, and test, it needs lot of testing. When you are planning to implement some IAM solution into your organization, it needs a lot of testing. Without testing, without proper QA, you cannot implement in production, because it can shut down your business in one day, because it will involve all those critical applications, right? And think about it, think about that you messed up. You have gone to the production with the IAM system, and all these accesses, it's it's jeopardized. It's gone, right? Even in one day, there'll be no work. And think about the big companies. If it shut down for one day, if it's Google shut down for 30 seconds or maybe 3 seconds or 4 seconds, they have loss of $1 billion, right? But if you just mess up the IAM system, implement in production, it's done. So testing is very important. It's all depend on the testing and QA, the proper QA. And just I have tried to give you very real time or very practical understanding how the IAMs are getting actually implemented in the organization. So do you have any questions on that?
Quite clear, sir. It's quite clear.
Okay. I think this is my last slide. Scope and expectations. Um, this is the current scenario. Though we have IAM, I would not say it's in mature state. It's just like cloud. It's just the beginning. Though it has started since, I would say, 2005, 2006, when not 2005, 2006, 2000, yeah, I would say 2003, 2004, the IAM came to the industry. People are starting implementing IAM. They started knowing IAM from that time, but still it's in nurturing stage. I would say there are a lot of things are getting implemented. There people are uh, getting hired, even in Microsoft also, in Amazon also, in Google also. They are still implementing IAM. They have the IAM in place altogether, but like RBAC, role-based access management, PBAC, these are very nurturing stage. These are in very nurturing stage. PAM, they are implementing it now. So demand is very high, but we are lacking of required skill set. I mean, I can give you a example from my experience. When I was in UBS, we were trying to hire some people. We are trying to onboard Sentify. There is another tool called Sentify. If someone here is from Unix background, he or she should know that in Unix you need to create local users, right? It's not like Windows system that if a user ID is getting created in Active Directory and you can use that particular user ID and password in many applications, right? It's not like that in Unix. For each Unix servers, you have to create those user IDs locally in a Unix server. In today also, if you have 100 Unix servers and you have one person who should have access to those 100 servers, you have to create his ID manually in 100 servers, even today. So that's the drawback, right? So Centified is a product. It's a very in product in today's market. It's CEN um, TRIFY, Centify. It onboard the Unix systems or Unix servers to the Active Directory. So when a person is getting created in Active Directory, he can use the same credential to any Unix servers or any Linux servers. So that's the purpose of Centify onboarding, Centify solution. In 8 months, we couldn't get a single person who knows Centify. And I was talking about for Swiss Bank, you cannot imagine their salary. We 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 tried even from Centify, hiring someone from Centify itself. We couldn't. Ultimately, we give that particular part. We sold out that particular part to third party, and Centify sent their people, and they have implemented it. A small part. So demand is very high, and required skill set is very, very, very low. I mean, if you think about the hardcore people we need today in industry, you can search it by IAM um, engineer or IAM developer. You will find, I can say, you will find 100 new jobs every day, just in India. Forget about US. 100 jobs or 500 jobs each day, but people are not there. So think about it. It uh, could be a way for you. There are four type of people. There are many types of people. There are four major part, or there are four major segments in IAM that we are looking for. One is obviously the architect. They are most senior guys, and you cannot be a architect just from the first day. You have to start with developing, and slowly you'll get to know the whole thing, and then you will go for the designing and architect part. But who is experienced, obviously their salary is very, very high for any I'm not talking about IAM. I'm talking about any architect for any applications. They're highest paid. DevOps guy, the actual developers, right? So that is one. Another one is IAM administrator. So they will only will be the administrator of IAM, and it needs a significant skill set. Obviously, the DevOps needs a significant skill set, and in the right box, I say the languages to know. It's mainly goes for architect and DevOps. All those drivers, all those applications of IAM in today built on many things, but these are the main things. If you know, I'd say if you know Java and C#, you know almost 80% of the all the vendors product, because most of the vendors product built on Java in today's IAM solution. There are a few with Python here and there, and obviously HTML, and it's all front end thing. Scripting is very major part in IAM. you need to know the scripting. It can be Java scripting, it can be Perl, um, it can be Shell also sometimes, because many IAM solutions today also it's a Unix based, Linux based. So these are the main languages to know. But if you know Java, I mean solid Java, then you can go for any IAM solution. Another one is obviously like me, the project managers, and it's a part of IAM, specialized IAM. Today's world, there is nothing called project manager. Project manager concept is going away. It's now becoming TPM. Sorry to write that it's PM. It should be TPM, because there is a need of project managers, obviously, in the company, the so-called project managers, right? But those project managers are very, very senior, and they can handle any project, and people are looking for those kind of project managers for any project. Like it can be a non-technical project also, but mostly in today's world, in our world, we call it TPM. So it's a technical PM. So who has to have, have to have the technical knowledge. He needs to understand what he's talking about, what is IAM end to end, who can understand the design, who can make things uh, easier to understand to the developers, who can understand what developers are talking, who can give good, we can give their input, who can find out the risk. So it's kind of technical PM. So in today, it's all technical PM. There is nothing PM so far. As of now, in any technical field. As I said, there are a lot of vendors in today's world. Earlier, it was very few. Um, Micro Focus, Micro Focus is like 3 steps now. Earlier, it was Novell, then it's went to NetIQ, and now NetIQ is hired. Acquired by Micro Focus. So Microsoft it was there. It's today also it's there, but mostly it's now Azure. Microsoft on-prem IAM solution. I do not have any company in my knowledge who is using Microsoft as an on-prem solution for IAM, but many companies are using Azure IAM in the cloud. So Microsoft is mainly focusing their IAM solution for cloud, not for on-prem. There are federation servers in demand from Microsoft, but mostly not. Oracle, it's very in my knowledge, at least 40 to 50% companies are using Oracle. It's a very strong identity and access management solution that Oracle is having today. It's Oracle Identity Manager. There are a few versions, but Oracle has the ability to resolve your most of the problem. SailPoint is another very popular. Okta, Savient, ForgeRock, Ping. There are a lot of other companies. There are a lot of options, but these are the giants. I mean, if you name it, who in IAM solution, they have deal with one of these solutions for sure. So these are the giants in IAM fields. Any questions on this? Okay. Who I am, obviously, Sridhar sir has given that, so I'm not going to that. So now it's question. I don't know that whether any time left. I don't know, but if you have any questions, because I do not have anything, any slides, but I'm open to any questions now.
Guys, if you have a question, you can unmute and ask. And if you're not comfortable unmuting, you can put it on the chat box. I can read it for you. So as a positive note, so everyone is clear with every single topic which sir have said, I guess. Yes. So moving on to the vote of thanks, as time already It's 10:32. Personally, thank you, sir. So good morning, everyone. Once again, and respected Mr. Saumik Sarkar, our respected faculty coordinator, Mr. Sridhar sir, and all the participants. It's such an honor for me to give this opportunity of thanking all the delegates on the behalf of our CSE department and our college. I would express my gratitude to all their presence and contributions to make this tech talk a possibility. I extend my gratitude to our honorable speaker of the day, Mr. Saumik Sarkar, to take out his time on his busy schedule to grace this event, and especially on the topics which you explained, sir. What is identity and access management? Why every organization is going for it? What is the compounds of it? And especially the scopes and expectations. So it is a feather in the hat of the event, which we know a lot of things. And I extend my gratitude to Mr. Sridhar sir, our assistant professor of our CSE department, to organize this TED talk, even in the midst of this pandemic, for our students' well-being on their fields and introduce their new domains. Thank you everyone once again for making this tech talk a possibility and a success.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your valuable time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem.